Step into love like you've never been hurt before. Step into trust like you've never been burned before.
Hello and welcome to Braveheart Conversations,
where we learn the art of love through brave and compassionate conversations. I am Jillian Landis.
and I'm Marie Wallace.
And we are your hosts today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Braveheart Conversations. My name is Jillian Landis, and I'm here today with Marie Wallace.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about blame and how we give our power away. A lot of this is unconscious, but I'd love to raise some consciousness around the area of blame so that you can start to pay attention when you're giving away your power and how that's not serving you. So blame, or really putting responsibility for a decision or a choice on somebody else, obviously can be very disempowering. It happens a ton, especially in intimate relationships. I'd like to talk about, some of the areas I've even been guilty of at times where I can remember, especially like sobriety was a big thing for me. So I've never had an issue with substances, but I've had a huge issue with codependency. And so
Me too.
There have been times, especially early on before I was in recovery, where my thought process was, well, when he's sober or he's clean, then I can get on with my life. And because he's using, that's holding me back in all of these ways, and I was super resentful. And really, I was just blaming and putting responsibility on my partner for my own growth, when really that was just an illusion. I was perfectly capable of moving forward with or without that person being sober. But I hear this in small ways too, ways that I also used to use. I can't have a good diet or good nutrition if my partner's eating junk food. Mm-hmm. We blame everyday lifestyle behaviors.
Even if I don't have a job because no one will hire me. I mean, there's lots of situational blame as well as just on other people. It's like, well, it's a bad season, or it's we do a lot of the blame.
Yeah. So even paying attention.
It's easy to be passive.
Super easy to be passive. It's easy to give away your power because it's difficult to own that responsibility. Because then you really have to face it and realize that you need to take action. Some different choices. Yeah. It's a little easier to just sit and blame when then I basically get to excuse myself from whatever the next action might be.
Because sometimes those actions are scary.
They're always scary. They're tough. They're tough. Even though those are the things that will light you up the most.
And stretch you.
They'll stretch you. They'll activate you. I feel most alive and aligned when I'm doing things that are most healthy for me. So it's a really basic example. So I'll use like when I'm getting up in the morning, eating well, working out, moving my body. Those things feel really aligned for me. But that's a great example for ways that we can easily create excuses or compromises. Because it's an everyday kind of a thing. Not even just an everyday thing. It's an every meal thing, right? Mm-hmm. So multiple times a day you're making choices. And I know, not that it's good or bad or wrong or right to make those decisions. I know which ones make me feel best.
Exactly.
And so there's nothing wrong with choosing junk food. But you will either feel more aligned with that decision and activated and alive by that decision, or you will feel less activated and alive. Exactly. You'll feel more numb, more stuck. So feel, regardless of what decision you're thinking about making, do you feel more aligned and alive, or do you feel less, do you feel stuck? Do you feel numb?
And that removes the guilt. It doesn't remove the fear, because the fear will be there, but you just do it anyway.
Yes.
And it's what makes you feel good at the end of the day. Why else make the choice? But going back to what we talked about in past things, it's always a choice, nothing to feel bad about, feel guilty about. Because there are times when we go, oh, having this, I don't know, whatever, this comfort food sounds so amazing. And that might be something I need psychologically.
Yeah, totally. And I love...
There's a whole different respect or aspect of the food.
Yeah. So just judgment in general, regardless of whatever decision it is, whether it's, I want a piece of cake, you know, sometimes that is what makes you feel most aligned and alive. Depriving yourself is a really icky energy.
It is.
So deprivation is never the goal. It's not about I can't have this. It's about what
I'm choosing.
What makes me feel most aligned and alive, right? I love the question, what would a woman do who loves herself? And if that's my guiding question for all of my choices, I tend to make much better choices. What would a woman do who loves herself? But I also feel like it's very important not to have judgment in whatever decision we make. Maybe I sleep in this morning instead of working out, or maybe I choose a relationship. This is another big one where people have a lot of shame and judgment. Maybe I choose a relationship where I'm feeling some self-judgment about what I should or shouldn't do. Or maybe I didn't set a boundary. Or maybe I'm in work, you know, that a job that I don't love. And so there's lots of areas that we can have shame and judgment. So it's not about the shame and judgment. It's not about making yourself wrong. That's a really icky energy, being wrong. There's no right or wrong.
Right. What decision can I make? I think that's why meditation and those kinds of practices work, because it's bringing you in the present moment. What can I do right now with this decision? And we think that we have to do these great big changes, and all along it's the little small choices along the way that build our muscles, our spiritual muscles, and allow us to make better choices each time.
Yes. So I love that point that it really is the small lifestyle changes. It's the everyday. It's not the big decisions that show up that we think are the really big things. It's the really tiny decisions all day long, which on the flip side, those little tiny compromises are what can really kill us too.
Exactly.
So those
we call
are
it
also
cutting corners, when people cut corners. Yeah.
Yep. When you cut corners, it's that
compromise.
Little, I call it the whiny bitch voice in my head. And she's super smart.
She's sassy too.
She makes so much sense. She's very logical, and I can logic my way out of just about anything. I can make those little compromises, or the little blaming things, right? Because she's a master at blame. Well, you can do it later after so-and-so has, cleaned up their act. Then, I think...
And then eventually it's the cost of your soul.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing is when I talk with my people, it's those small choices that are the big things that will change your life forever. It's the small decisions every day. The compromise is great in some situations, but when it comes to choices that we're making for ourselves, a lot of times the compromise is out of fear or all of those lower energies like we were talking about, and it doesn't do us any good. It costs us our soul.
Yeah, I like that you brought up that's often coming from fear, and I know the whiny bitch voice in my head, it's fear-based. She's totally wanting to make decisions out of fear, out of safety, what's going to be safe and cautious, and she's afraid of trauma triggers. She's afraid of what's happened in the past. And so she would
are afraid of not knowing what's next. Because sometimes the fear of not knowing is greater than the animal we know.
My heart, however, wants to make decisions out of inspiration. So, what I feel inspired to do is often what I feel most scared of doing. But if I follow that inspiration voice, yes, it takes a tremendous amount of courage. And it also takes responsibility for my choices. This is key for this discussion because, we're talking about blame. So, making my own decisions, it requires me taking responsibility for my choices. That nobody else, I'm not at the mercy of anyone else.
Well, it's empowering.
Yeah, well, blame is super disempowering. Blame takes
well,
away
knowing
our
I
power.
have a choice is empowering to me.
Yeah.
If I am at the mercy of anyone else, it disempowers me to think that I can do anything about it.
Yeah, and often, I will hear people that get super entrenched in what they don't have choices around. So, maybe I have a diagnosis. Maybe I have a child who's struggling with a diagnosis or an addiction or mental illness. Or maybe I have a spouse that's struggling. There's all sorts of limitations that we can see, or poor me, I didn't choose this, or, I wish this was different. And if we're putting our energy there, we're really shutting off any solutions.
Yeah. No, now what?
Yeah. But if we were to, I like to remind people that there are always choices.
Always.
Maybe not in the areas that you want them to be, but there are always choices. And so if I have, let's say, a diagnosis, let's say I have a mental illness, maybe I didn't choose that mental illness, but I do have other choices, right? I have choices within, what I'm going to do, what my next step is going to be,
How to get help,
or what I'm going to do for work, or where I'm going to live, or there's still choices, even within having some additional struggles. When I found myself in a relationship with an addict, I didn't have choices around who that person was going to show up to be. I didn't have any power over whether or not that person was going to pick up a drug or or a can of beer. But I had choices about what I could do with my life. I had choices about how I was going to better myself, what goals I was going to have in spite of whatever else was going on. So I think a lot of times we limit ourselves because we're so focused on whatever it is that we wish that we had choices.
Our regrets. I think going on that too, because I see it in relationships often, is they want the other person to change. And so they'll come to events and they'll bring their partner, and then they'll go could you just fix them? And then they leave going, oh, wait a minute, it's all about me making choices for me. And as I change and grow, my partner can't help but change and grow because it's natural. And then the choices become different choices. And so I may choose to stay. I may choose to continue to grow in what feels comfortable and good for me. And I'm not worried about that other person. And I think that not only does it empower me, but it's a happier choice. And it's not well, who's right, who's wrong, are you happy? And then it's not about the other person. Because every time we make it like you were saying earlier, at the mercy of someone else, we've given away all our choice, all our power. And we feel we can't do anything. Yeah. And that's an icky feeling as well. Oh, I can't do anything.
Yeah. It was such a light bulb moment for me when I realized I was not at the mercy of any other human being. That I get to make my own choices, period. And that has evolved for me. At the beginning, I can remember it was super scary to make really tiny decisions. And I thought I needed permission for everything. And, so that has been an evolution of its own. Now, I don't ask permission for anything. I'm my permission. And I get to make much bigger decisions, not because the decisions weren't there in the past, but because today I believe I can make them. It's all in my own perception of me and my choices. So that's another thing that's huge, and I hope that our listeners can take that away too, is often we are as trapped as we tell ourselves we are.
That's for sure. It's a culture change as well, because we are taught, some of us are still living with that paradigm of, do as I say, not as I do, or obey kind of situations. And it's not saying not to follow it's not saying any of that. It's just saying what feels right in the moment, and you're really not harming anyone making your own choices. What I do should not disempower someone else. They are choosing to be disempowered. That's where I was going with that, I guess.
Well, whenever we choose blame, we're choosing to be disempowered.
True.
Whenever we decide to shirk that responsibility, it is easier in the moment. It is absolutely easier in the moment to give that to somebody else. And then it's almost like this, whew, okay.
No confrontation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pity party, right?
Is.
Poor me. I just have to wait. And this is a key too. Blame is often associated with waiting.
It's true.
So when XYZ happens, then I can, which is super disempowering. Whatever you want to do, you can do it now. You don't have to wait for anything. And but I hear especially a lot of women will be in this position of when my child graduates, when when my husband reaches this milestone, when we retire, when I have these savings, it's if then. When this happens, then I can. And it's so disempowering. It's such a lie, because there's always going to be something else. You're going to hit that retirement, and then you're going to go, oh, well, but then, I still have to have this savings, or I don't, maybe we can't retire now, or whatever the thing is. But it always changes. It's an endless loop that our brain creates, because we're too scared of whatever that responsibility is. And the responsibility is in tandem with what we really want.
Exactly.
It's in tandem with our alignment. It's what our passion and our inspiration is saying, do that.
Even if it's just one step. That's what I going back to what we started with, is sometimes people think we need to do these big grandiose things to get that thing that we want. But what's one small step towards that goal? One small step, and then the next day you take a different step, and another day, and it's a building of steps that lead you to that thing that you so want. But sometimes it's like we talked about in previous ones, they don't know what they want.
Right, and I'll use this for an example too. Working out is a really easy example for me, so I'll use this. But so I remember when I decided I was really fatigued. I was a little bit overweight, not terrible, but I didn't feel comfortable in my body, and I felt sluggish, and I just felt tired all the time. And I had known from previous experiences I felt better when I moved more. So it was that small decision to get up in the morning and go to the gym. And I can remember I started out with 15 minutes on the treadmill. And then I was like, okay, my body feels tired. I'm going to call it a day. And I did that for a while until I was up to 45 minutes a day. And then I added weights. And then eventually I went to a trainer. And those tiny little choices build and add up. It's the consistency. It's really the consistency that makes all the difference. And although I'm using working out as an example, this is true of anything. This is building a business. This is setting boundaries. Start tiny. And then, you can build, you're using your voice more and more and more. And something that you never thought you would have been able to say, 6 months ago, you can say because you started with something really small.
Exactly.
And then, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in a competitive bodybuilding competition. That didn't happen overnight. I didn't just choose to go do a bodybuilding competition. I had no idea that I would even
ever do it.
Want to do that, or like if that wasn't even in my spectrum of possibilities. That wasn't it wasn't there. What was there was I just know I feel better moving, so I'm going to get up and I'm going to go work out for 15 minutes.
Right.
That's where it started. So, but this is true.
Joe's was just driving to the gym and drinking coffee at the gym. And he goes, okay, I'm getting to the gym. I may not be working out, so then the next step is...
So beautiful.
And then how I got into powerlifting, I was going to the gym with Joe, and he bought me a weightlifting belt. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And it had never entertained the idea. The practice was already there. I had already been working out and weightlifting, and now that weightlifting belt represented a possibility for something new that I had never considered if I hadn't taken those smaller steps beforehand and just wanted to do something different.
Yes. Mastery doesn't happen overnight. Not in anything. Not in anything. So mastery of relationships and boundaries, mastery of self-responsibility, what we're talking about today. You know, you may have a pattern of blame, and that's okay. Acknowledge that. And now, what can you do to slowly start taking that power back? Can you catch yourself when you say, oh, I didn't do such and such because, you know.
Just capturing the thought.
Yes.
That's a great start.
Just starting to acknowledge that. Just some self-awareness of, oh, I just gave my power away. And then it's funny how the brain works because we only use like 5% of our brain.
It's
like
so small.
There's like 95% of our brain is just subconscious. It's just automatic. When you get in the car and you drive to work, you hardly even remember the drive because you're just on autopilot. That's not even conscious thought anymore. And that's how habits work. It's not conscious thought. You just do it. And so you cannot forget what we've just shared with you today. Your brain can't forget it. So now I'm going to be in your thoughts.
It's called reticular activating system. It's stuck in your head. That's true science. It's stuck in your head. Now you're always going to be thinking.
You cannot unknow it. So now you are empowered with this information. So now you're going to start catching yourself when you say, I can't because, or I didn't because. And so you're welcome.
You're welcome, and we'll be watching. No. Because we can be accountability as well.
So catch yourself, be aware, and then slowly start changing your verbiage. Start taking that power back. Oh, never mind. I chose not to do that.
And language is so powerful.
Yes.
Just even hearing, so I do improv with Megan Bryant, and we do the yes and. And even, it's funny because when the word but comes up, I hear it now so specifically. And if you're just changing to, yes, this has happened, and this is what I'm going to do about it, it's a lot different than the but.
Yes.
And even in our conversation, so just changing some of our language, small things really make a huge difference. So as we're looking at our thoughts and capturing them, what is a new, different thought that has more energy to it, that has more movement to it? Because you can actually feel in your words if it's sticking you. So even if you say the word but, just like, yes, I'm going to the gym, but you can even feel like how it stops you, right? Yes, I'm going to the gym and and you can feel it flowing you into what's next. And so even just being conscious of the energy of your words will really get you moving as well.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a phenomenal way to wrap up today, is to talk about some of those wording choices that have made such a difference for me, whether it's just in my mind or I'm actually saying them. Yes and is huge. I find myself all the time in conversation, if I disagree with something, instead of saying but blah 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 or I disagree, I can say and, because I'm then acknowledging that you're
acknowledging the other person.
You're valid. Like, your perspective is valid, and there may be pieces of truth in that, and And this is how I feel. And it's not as competitive. It's more collaborative. So and is great.
It's win-win.
Yeah. And then I also think, as far as blame goes and taking responsibility, word choices for me really, really pay attention when you use the words I have to. I have to. This was a huge one for me. I have to do blah, blah, blah. And I would say that all the time. I have to, or I should,
Yeah,
or
I should comes
I'm
up a lot.
supposed to. I'm supposed to is a really big one. Well, I'm supposed to feel this way, or I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to be this. Really, really disempowering words. So word choices for me that have been so much better, that light me up, is I choose. I'm choosing to do blah, blah, blah. And that puts me in a different space. Like, instantly, it takes away that blame. Because if I'm saying I have to, then I'm often in kind of this victim space.
Back to the mercy of others.
Yep. Or a situation. Like, I'm giving away my power. But if I use the words, I'm choosing to do this, instead of I don't have the money for.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one, right? I don't have the money for that. I can say, I'm choosing to prioritize my finances differently. I'm choosing to spend my money on something else. Way more empowering for me. I get to is another one.
Yeah, I get to.
Instead of I have to, I get to. I get to go to work. I get to go to the gym. I get to whatever the thing is, because that's true for me. That's reality. That's what I'm choosing, because that's the lifestyle that I love, right? So my work, I love my work.
Yeah, I do too.
Right? I get to go to work. I get to write content. I get to meet with clients. I get to build my website. Like, those things are things I enjoy. But the energy around saying I get to versus I have to go meet with a client.
There's also a gratitude in that. If you think about it too, even if I get to pay my bills, think about all those people that don't have that.
Yes.
I get to pay a bill, or I get to go to work, or I get to do these things. So there's an element of gratitude in that choice as well. And so I had a metaphor that came up in my head. So I'm thinking of this race car going around the thing, and the flag that slows them down is the shoulds and the coulds and supposed tos, right? And the green flag is, and take another lap, and take another. I don't know. It was kind of weird, but there you go.
Very activating. Yes. Well, it is interesting. So I noticed, following along that vein, when I am in that space of I get to and I'm choosing, I know that for me, I'm in such a space of activation. I want to do more. It's
energizing.
Yes, it's energizing. I have much higher energy when I'm using those words and I'm in that mindset. And it's interesting, the power of words, because it does give me an actual feeling. It will put me in a different space rather than I have to. I have to feels very heavy. And it feels like an
avoidance
force.
too.
It's force. I'm being forced to. No, you're not being forced to do anything. If you don't want to go to the job, if that's a have to, quit the fucking job. And I guess this is a space for me that's so huge today in my life, which is it's terrifying. But following your inspiration and that intuitive voice, regardless of whatever makes sense, whatever is safe. So I do encourage people to quit the fucking job. I have done that. I've walked that path myself, and I've seen people walk that path or leave the relationship or whatever the thing is that your heart is calling you to do, that you feel inspired to do. It's usually the most terrifying thing. But if you're willing to follow your inspiration with abandon, no matter what the cost, with all the fears, all the things you don't know how they're going to work out. If you're willing to trust yourself and the universe,
it always turns out.
It always works out. It always works out. And if you have this unshakable trust that the inspiration burning in me, the passion in me for me coaching, right? For me making an impact through coaching. If I'm willing to do that at all costs, it doesn't matter. I take it all, bitch.
Right.
Right? Take it all. I'm willing to die to be in that purpose.
It feels so right.
Yeah, that's
the
alignment.
feeling of it. You can feel it in your whole body. It feels so right. And when you make a decision from that space, it's not only
the universe supports you.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get to believe that the universe is going to be there to support you no matter what. And it's trusting no matter what happens. I mean, it could be, maybe I got zero money in the bank account, or I lose my car, or whatever the thing is. And still trusting the universe that whatever is happening, it's all for my benefit. So I like to use this example, that the divine is always conspiring in my favor. So even if I, miss the flight, or I sleep through my alarm clock, or whatever the things are that we think are like bad and wrong and it shouldn't have worked out that way, leave space to trust the universe that particular thing happened in your favor because maybe that flight went down, or maybe the event that you were flying to, something terrible thing happened, or you avoided a car accident, or a million things. We don't know what is best. We think we know. We think we know what we want, but very often we don't.
And the universe does.
Yeah.
I saw this really quickly. I saw this story where a woman's husband, they'd been married like 20 years, and he just said, "I'm done." And no real reason, but we've grown apart. And she ended up going to Africa and at this elephant orphanage, and she was a vet, and she became this phenomenal person who was not only helping the elephant orphanage, but all the people surrounding. She ended up moving there and found who she flourished.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Flourished.
Yeah, the things that we often think are the worst things in the world that could happen are often our biggest miracles. And so when we move through the world with that level of trust, when we're willing to fully jump into our inspiration, like whatever this
fully
intuition
jump.
says, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to fully trust that whatever happens in the wake of that is exactly what's meant to happen. You're invincible. They're untouchable. And all of that particular lifestyle, that level of awakening, that level of consciousness and living in passion and alignment starts with all of these little tiny decisions where we stop giving away our power, where we stop compromising.
Stop blaming.
It's listening. It's, letting that little voice inside become alive. We do so much to suppress it. We do so much to say, oh yeah, but no, you can't do that because, it's that whiny bitch voice, right? That is there to say, but no, you really can't.
Or you're not enough.
You really can't have, a good diet, a healthy diet because, you don't have enough money for that. Or, that would really inconvenience your family. So I hear these, right?
I do too.
Yeah, we don't have the budget. It's too expensive. Healthy food is just really expensive.
It is, yeah.
All of these things, it's that whiny bitch voice that's I can't. And the voice of inspiration is scrappy, really fucking scrappy. And it says, I don't care what the cost is. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to make it happen. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And we're going to do this.
And often there's also a happiness and a joy that comes from that. Those are the little miracles every day allow you to live happy every day in the big picture.
Well, again, when you choose that voice of inspiration,
Exactly.
when you do that, like, you are energizing yourself, and it just builds and it just builds and builds and builds until you are just so full of
And you
life.
go, I can't believe this is my life.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times I've had that thought. Is this really my life? Can you pinch me? Like, is this real?
We're excited about that.
Yeah, but that's what happens when you start to reverse those compromises. Stop blaming. Take that power back. I choose to.
Start with your language. That's the first step.
Yes, yep. In your head and verbally. Start telling yourself different messages. Stop yourself in your tracks when you start to say, I can't because, or the buts.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, but. So all of those things get to change, and you get to become aware of them and make those tiny little shifts. And
enjoy those little miracles.
Yeah, your life will become one miracle after another. That's been true for me, and I've watched that happen so many times in other people's lives as well. Well, this has been super fabulous talking about blame and taking back your power. Yeah.
That was exciting.
We both feel energized to go take on the rest of the day now.
We are ready. Are you?
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions about this particular topic or another topic that you would like us to talk about,
suggestions or
suggestions, challenges, questions, we would love to hear them. You can reach out to me at defytheaverage@gmail.com, or you can reach Marie
at mariesgold.com.
Yes.
And we look forward to talking to you next week. We're here every Thursday, and we just wish the best for you. Hope that you have a phenomenal week.
Yes. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just